All right, hello, welcome to today's Verdict, the interactive show that gives you your legal rights and options. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. Well, today's Verdict is always encouraging you to stay connected. Make sure to tweet me at David Lesch and hashtag Ask Today's Verdict if you have a question. And check us out at bronxnet.tv. Starting July 5th, New York employers must now tell applicants how artificial intelligence is being used to make hiring decisions. This law is called Automated Employment Decision Tools. But how does it work? What should job hunters know? Employment attorney Peter Rahbar is back here to tell us more. Peter, thanks for coming back to the studio.
Glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
We love having you. So it's so much easier. We were talking about this off camera, but just applying for jobs now. You basically just take your resume, upload it, and send it right on to the prospective employer. But they have so many resumes to go through, I would think AI would be a good way to just cut through and get right to the candidate that you need.
Well, that's the debate, David. Is it a good way? It's certainly one way. And employers are facing a problem where, because of budget cuts, they're cutting back on their HR and recruiting departments. And because of tools available to candidates, as you mentioned, on sites like LinkedIn and others, a candidate can send out hundreds of resumes with one click. So people are applying for more jobs than ever. Employers are getting more resumes than ever, and they're searching for ways to get through these resumes and find the diamond in the rough with smaller HR departments. So
how do they use HI? Like, how do you do it? Like, do you plug in certain features that you're looking for in terms of words in a particular resume that resonate, or age of candidates? Like, what do you put in there? Like, how does it work?
Well, there's a lot of different ways AI tools are being used in the recruiting process, and as these generative AI tools are improving, we're seeing new applications of them. But it could be something as simple as, here are the search terms and find the best candidates with these skills. And so if you're a candidate, certainly one piece of advice is you should be tailoring your resumes. You shouldn't be sending out 400 resumes. You should be tailoring your resumes
to that particular employer.
Specific jobs, exactly. But employers are using these tools to either screen resumes. In some cases, they're conducting interviews. They're in by video, and there are actually laws in other states to address that use.
But who's conducting the interview? The AI is actually conducting the interview.
Exactly.
Not just screening through the resumes and picking, but actually doing the interview itself.
Right. They're taking a script and interviewing candidates via video conferencing, and making decisions based on those interviews. So, there's a lot of different ways AI is being used in the process. I mean, you're not going to use AI to hire a CEO, right? But you're going to use it to. A lot of employers are using it to screen out these thousands of resumes, or create lists of the strongest candidates. The tier A's, the tier B's, the tier C's of the resumes that have come in, and then hopefully managers are using the output of those tools to make the decisions. Hopefully there's still a human touch.
There
involved.
Certainly can be an abuse of the system. What if AI decides it only likes a particular type of candidate, and you don't even realize that AI likes a particular candidate? They look for the 35 to 40-year-old white male, whatever. They're picking. You don't even realize they're doing it, but they're doing it. They're really negating so many of the other resumes. How do you pick up on that? How do you know whether the AI itself is actually prejudiced against a certain type of worker, prospective worker?
Well, that's where the New York City Automated Employment Decision Tool law comes in, because AI does have these problems. It's documented. There's research that shows it. AI tends to be racist, and it tends to be ageist. In some cases, it can also be sexist. So what this law requires, if you're using these tools, and that's important, to substantially assist or replace discretionary decision making, you have to, 1, audit the tools on a yearly basis, 2, post a notice to the applicants, and 3, provide an alternate means if an applicant needs an accommodation.
Let's talk to the audit. Talk about the audit first. How does that work? How do you audit a system and know that it's not being unfair to others? How does that, does the audit just give you a list of who's picked and who's not picked, and based on that, you're supposed to look at it and know that there's been a little bit of prejudice to the system? How does that work?
Well, technically under the law, you're supposed to hire an independent auditor, someone who has no financial connection whatsoever to the company. And guess what? That's an emerging business in the AI field now, is to be one of these auditors. And what they're supposed to do is take the raw data and look at who applied, who was selected in different categories. Now, importantly, age is not one of the categories, disability is not one of the categories. These are gender and race and ethnicity based categories right now. That's supposed to be analyzed. And basically the auditors look to see who applied, who was selected, how does that compare amongst groups, what are the selection rates and what are the impact rates. And then based on that, they make it, they perform an analysis on whether there are statistically significant differences.
And you mentioned earlier that you have to let the applicant know that they're being screened in this process. And by the way, what I thought is interesting, because I read a little bit about it, is that the AI is allowed to put you in little buckets of different areas of where that you would fall.
Right.
But as long as a human is picking out of those buckets, and that's fine. Correct?
Well, right now,
Or
yes. And so, I would say there's a really interesting thing going on right now in the employment law space. There's this law which, is the first of its kind anywhere in the world to regulate the use of these tools in the hiring process. So that's a good thing. But there's plenty of loopholes. And so the, advocates for employees who are pushing for this law are worried about the loopholes that employers could jump through. And so you raise one of them. So, an employer could just say, well, the AI is not making decisions. It's just providing me with different sets of applicants I could look at. Well, the reality is, if there's an A list and a B list, is the employer ever going to look at the B list?
Right.
I don't know.
No.
They could probably make a pretty good argument that they would, but they don't have to.
Getting back to the opting out, so let's say you're a prospective candidate and you opt out and you say, no, I don't want my resume picked this way. Do they have to give you another way of being interviewed, or do you just not have a chance at that job?
Well, technically, they are supposed to provide you with, an accommodation, whether you need one or whether you just want one because you don't want the tool used. Now, the law is not clear on what it has to be and how they have to do it. And
I'm sure if you opt out, though, it doesn't make a great impression on the employer, who all of a sudden says, well, this is going to be a problem candidate to begin with. I'll interview, but you're not getting this kind of job.
Well, it's definitely a way to single yourself out. Whether it's a
Right.
good way to single yourself out, probably not. But that's the reality of what job searches are for certain jobs right now. I mean, you're going to have to deal with these tools. And so my advice would be, be the candidate who, can really tailor your resume and your qualifications and your skills to satisfy these tools,
Right.
and get ahead.
Great stuff. We got to have you back to talk about this. I could talk about this all day.
Sure.
But,
I would love to.
All right, but we have to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.